Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here and welcome to my character guide for Cloud in Final Fantasy VII Remake. This video will go over all the basics of his combat, all of his weapons, where to find them, his skills, and his limit breaks. Since the game just came out though, spoiler warning now in case you see something that you just didn't want to see. Cloud is a tried and true melee fighter who can swap between two different modes, one with a little more defense and one with a little more offense. The most basic stance you'll find yourself in on Cloud is Operator mode. This is a good all-arounder mode and will feel pretty comfortable for anyone picking up the game. The attacks in this mode hit lighter and faster, you're able to dodge, you're able to block, and you can even move around the arena at normal speeds in battle when not attacking. You can even animation cancel certain attacks in this mode by entering your other one, Punisher mode, which we'll cover in a second, or by activating certain skills. On the other hand, we have Punisher mode, which is a hard-hitting counter stance mode. Now this has low mobility, only allowing you to take small steps at a time, and you're completely unable to block magic in this mode. Now it's still great for punishing pressured or staggered enemies just on an offensive note, so whenever they're in either of those statuses, it's good to switch to Punisher mode. Most attacks also hit in a wider area, which makes it pretty good for dealing with large groups of enemies, though Operator mode can also do that fairly well. The big thing with Punisher mode is that your block is replaced by a counter attack. This is great for dealing with groups of enemies that are primarily attacking you physically. When you see one coming, just hold the R1 button to block, and instead, you'll unleash a massive counter attack on all of them. Now when you want to swap from Punisher back to Operator, pressing the triangle button will actually cause you to do one final attack when you swap back to Operator mode. Now, on the other hand, if you try to dodge while in this mode, you'll automatically go back to Operator without doing the bonus attack. Now, skills are actually tied to weapons in Final Fantasy VII Remake, so we have to talk about the weapons and skills in tandem. For this next section, we'll be going through each of the available weapons in the game, where to obtain them, a brief overview on how they can be used, and what their skill actually is, as well as how to become proficient in it. Becoming proficient in a skill means you can use it without having that weapon equipped, and it's usually pretty straightforward. Also, please note that all weapons have 6 connected materia slots when fully upgraded, but they all start with different amounts of materia slots or unlock these slots at different times throughout their upgrade process. We won't mention materia much when talking about the individual weapons unless it's important. The one skill you'll get that isn't tied to weapons is Braver. This is just a hard-hitting skill with a bit of a wind-up animation. It only costs 1 ATB, and you'll probably be using this on enemies that are staggered, especially early in the game. It's a little bit rigid, so if monsters move around a lot, they can actually get away from it pretty easily, but at least on staggered or boss enemies, it'll be great. First up, we have the starting weapon, the Buster Sword. You'll start the game with this, so you don't have to worry about where to obtain it. Now, this is an overall balanced weapon throughout the entire game. It's got some attack, some health, some MP, some magic attack power. It also has a few occasional unique boosts, but there's nothing really thematic about this weapon. It's just good old reliable. By weapon level 6, it has equal attack and magic with all the upgrades and equal defense and magic defense. The skill you'll want to learn from this is called Focus Thrust. This is a forward thrust that greatly increases the staggered gauge. This is really good to use when enemies are pressured, so you can take advantage of that bonus stagger and really get them to that staggered mode faster. Fortunately, you automatically learn this skill when you start the game. The second weapon is Iron Blade, which is automatically obtained when you play through Chapter 3. Now, the Iron Blade starts with good physical attack stats, but it gradually overtakes as a solid magic option later on. Now, it starts with some tanky skills, defense, reduced block damage, and increased counter damage. Prior to weapon level 6, though, it gets some high HP and low HP buffs, as well as one of my favorite skills in the game, Trade-Off, which rewards you MP whenever you take significant damage. At weapon level 6, it gets a ton more attack, magic attack, elemental damage, and finally, Reprieve, which lets you cheat death once per fight as long as you weren't at 1 HP when you triggered it. Now this is a good sustained MP and elemental offense option with a reliable enough amount of physical attack to fall back on. The skill you'll get from the Iron Blade is Triple Slash. This will dash at enemies 3 times, striking after each dash. If more than one enemy is alive, Triple Slash will prioritize targets it hasn't hit yet. Each strike gets stronger, so against enemies packed in a small corridor, bosses, or enemies with multiple parts that count as targets, this is a great skill. This was easily my most used Cloud skill across the entire game. And fortunately, you become proficient in this simply by striking 3 enemies in a single use in combat. Next up is the Nail Bat, which you'll earn from the Kids on Patrol quest in Chapter 8. Now this weapon has some slightly different attack animations that are more batty. It's especially obvious in Punisher, which will change your attack into a powerful bat swing with incredibly low mobility. This weapon is a low HP abusing choice for those who like to play on the edge. It starts with lots of crit and health options and quickly unlocks materia slots at weapon level 3. It also starts to get more and more low HP buffs, more crit, and also bonus damage to limbs on enemies that have them. There are even multiple low health crit boosts, each being a 50% crit boost, and even some defensive resistances. By weapon level 6, it gets Reprieve, just like the Iron Blade, which resonates well with its low HP style. Basically use this weapon if you want to play it under 25% HP. It's our red Tearstone ring. Above that, it pretty much loses most of its luster. The skill you learn from this is Disorder. Now this will dash at an enemy and follow up with a massively powerful strike. This attack from Disorder also switches your mode, making it a solid option for dealing high damage on your mode switch, such as closing the gap in Operator and immediately using your Punisher mode's attack. Become proficient by hitting an enemy with your basic attack after Disorder changes your fighting mode. Hard Edge is next, and you will purchase this when you get to Wall Market in Chapter 9 from the weapons store. This weapon is entirely focused on physical damage. It has some light boost to magic attack across its various upgrades, but will have pretty much quadruple the physical attack when it's fully upgraded. It has lots of buffs to all forms of attacking, including both of your different modes, aerial attacks, and weapon abilities. It also has some self-sustain for Cloud himself, restoring health on stagger at weapon level 4 and on defeating enemies at weapon level 5. If you want Cloud entirely focused on physical attacking, this is your weapon of choice. The skill from the Hard Edge is Infinity's End. Now this is basically a 2 ATB cost version of Braver with a much longer windup animation to boot. This directly gains bonus damage if enemies are staggered, on top of already being a hard-hitting skill. So if you manage to save up 2 ATB for an enemy stagger, this will be your go-to option if a limit break isn't available. Become proficient in this by using it on staggered enemies. The fifth weapon is the Mithril Saber, and this is also purchased in Wall Market, though in Chapter 14 instead of 9. As opposed to the Hard Edge, this is purely a mage weapon. It has quadruple the magic attack when fully upgraded. It also has tons of boosts to magic damage and your MP economy. It does also have a bit of magic defense and a bit of debuff resistance. Choose this weapon if you want to decimate enemies with magic, especially at max MP, as you'll get a 20% damage boost at max MP when you get that skill. Speaking of skills, this one's is Blade Burst. This unleashes 3 waves of magic in front of Cloud. Now similar to Braver, Cloud has pretty low mobility during this attack, so if enemies are fast and move away from the area of attack, it misses pretty easily. Even if using a different weapon, this skill is a solid option for dealing with enemies that swap resistances. Become proficient simply by landing the killing blow with this skill. The final weapon for Cloud is the Twin Stinger, which is obtained in Chapter 17 from a purple chest a little bit into the actual mission. This is kind of a jack-of-all-trades weapon, but it cheats a little bit towards the magic side of things. Early on, it has near equal boosts to everything, both offensively and defensively. The later you go, though, it just cheats towards magic users a little bit more. It grants a lot of max MP, but no max HP boosts. It does have other boosts to things like MP regeneration, elemental damage, even your healing spell cost will be reduced, and your elemental defense will be boosted. However, its magic attack and its physical attack are equal at max rank, and it does get Reprieve at weapon level 6. It's an overall solid weapon, though it does have less attack and magic attack than the fully powered Buster Sword. I'd say if you like to use both physical attacks and magic, but you like using magic a little bit more, this is probably the best weapon for you. And your skill for the Twin Stinger is going to be Counter Stance. Once activated, Cloud will counterattack the first enemy hit for a short time. Now it counterattacks more things than your Punisher mode does, but it still doesn't counter everything. Upon countering, you'll hit multiple times and deal incredibly high damage. This is great on certain bosses with qualifying attacks and large groups of enemies to quickly mow them down. And you simply become proficient at it by successfully counterattacking. And let's wrap up our character guide with talking about limit breaks. Cross slash will be the limit break that you start the game with. This will deal 3 slashes to the target with the final hit doing massive damage. This is great to use on already staggered enemies, but if you find yourself in a pinch and you just need to get the enemy off you, this can be good for that as well. The other limit break you can earn is Ascension. This is obtained from Don Corneo's Underground Coliseum in one of the later chapters. This deals a flurry of attacks on an enemy and increases their stagger gauge by quite a lot. While really good when the enemy is already staggered, this skill is really if you want to get them staggered more quickly. Leading from Ascension into an Infinity's End can actually be a pretty good way to get both a limit break and an Infinity's End and force a stagger with a lot of damage. Overall, Cloud's a fairly satisfying character to play. It takes a bit of getting used to swapping between his modes, especially if you like to use some of his skills. I don't like how some of his skills feel really stiff, but when they do hit, they do a lot of damage. On top of that, since Cloud has some pretty solid mage weapons, I have really liked using him as a mage, and with all the materia slots you get by the end of the game, he can be pretty proficient in both, even if you're running a weapon like the Hard Edge. It's pretty nice overall. And with that, that's going to be a wrap for my character guide to Cloud and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. We'll have all sorts of guides coming out on 7 Remake over the next week or so. I'll see all of you in the next one, and until then, take care.